Hey, it's Ramsey Dewey here with my wife Vanessa, and we saw Aquaman at the movie theater in 4D, which is code for the seat kicks you in the back of the head repeatedly during the action scenes.
Yeah, 4D was really good with Jumanji, but not that great with Aquaman.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen a 4D movie, but they have a few 4D theaters here in Shanghai, and we saw the movie Jumanji a while back at this theater, and it was cool because the seat moves around in the same direction.
You felt
the
like you were
camera
on
pans,
a Jeep when you were on a Jeep.
and there was some cool movement that went along with the film, and I thought, oh, 4D is pretty okay. And then we saw Aquaman. And every time there's any movement on the screen, the seat goes and starts kicking you in the back of the head. I felt like I was getting whiplash.
Basically, we just shouldn't have a headrest. Like, if there was no headrest, then I want to keep getting thunked in the back of the head.
Yeah, and so it's like rumbling and bucking you. It's like, man, my abs were engaged the whole time. I
thought like it'd be kind of cool, like to be like on a roller coaster feeling, but actually, roller coaster. The reason those are awesome is because it only lasts for 3 minutes. When you're in a movie theater for like an hour and a half or more, you don't want to feel like you're like this.
I honestly felt like I was sparring with my seat. My body was tensed up the same way I tense up when I spar. I'm like breathing the same way. My abdominals are tensed up the same way, and the seat's just like fighting me the whole time. And anytime there's an action scene, oh man, the seats went nuts. So,
but the good thing was like I did like some of the wind scenes and some of the ocean spray scenes.
Oh man, the ocean spray was killing me, man, because we're wearing 3D glasses, and there's like this water spray thing every time there's like a splash on screen, which happens a lot because it's Aquaman. Splashes right up in your face.
It was kind of just like that little mist. It wasn't
well,
like a splash.
You were wearing a skirt, and you covered the spraying nozzle with your skirt so it didn't get you square in the face after the first time. Me, however, I did not have that skirt advantage to cover up the nozzle, so it kept blasting me right in the 3D glasses. And so there's this mist covering up my glasses. I have to take off the glasses like every 5 minutes and wipe them off.
Okay, the thing that annoyed me was the dagger in the chair. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, Vanessa had like a lumpy chair with like this bump, this ridge that kept like poking her like a dagger in the back.
I think that was part of the experience. Like, I think every time there was like a dagger scene or a sword scene, this thing like came out and just hit me in the back.
Oh yeah, because the Black Manta character had a dagger he inherited from his father,
who inherited from his father. That was shocking and surprising every time. Like, oh, who just hit me? Like, who just stabbed me?
There was some unnecessary roughness from the seats. Now we will get to actually reviewing the movie in a bit, but.
We spent way too long on the 4D. Basically, it comes down to this. We aren't going to see any more 4D movies.
Yeah, when I go to the movies, I just want to chill and relax and soak it all in and not have to fight my seat.
We had a good time watching Jumanji in 4D, so we had high hopes. But
yeah, the seats weren't attacking us quite so much during that film. So,
on to
Aquaman. Aquaman.
Is there a song?
Man. No. Now, a lot of people...
sounded like Spider-Man.
Yes. A lot of people my age remember Aquaman from the TV show Super Friends. It was an animated cartoon back in the early 80s featuring a bunch of DC superheroes, including Aquaman. And because it was a really kid-friendly show, Aquaman kind of got this rap for being like the wimpiest, worst superhero. Like, people are like, oh, Aquaman just talks to fish. Lame. But the thing is, the ability to talk to fish and sea life, they worked that into this movie so well. It turned out to be, I think, one of Aquaman's most important powers in this film. I thought that was cool. One other thing I loved about this movie, probably the thing I loved about this movie the most, and I went in with really, really low expectations because so far, with very few exceptions, everything the DCEU has turned out as just being a steaming pile of garbage covered in flies and maggots. But one thing I loved about this movie is that instead of trying to be like some edgy diversion from the comics, this was probably the most faithful comic book adaptation to film I've ever seen. Probably the most faithful comic book adaptation ever made. I mean, the costumes were comic book accurate. They were not afraid to have the actual costumes from the comic. Like Black Manta, he had his big bubbly helmet with the big old red eyes, and I was like, whoa, they actually put that in there, and it worked. And Aquaman at the end, he had his orange gold plate scale mail armor and his green tight pants and all that, and it worked. And what's his name, Ocean Master, Aquaman's brother, had the purple scale mail armor and the goofy looking helmet during that battle scene at the end, and it worked. And
the octopus was there drumming out a beat.
Yeah, some people complained about the octopus online, like, why was there a random octopus drumming like it's a cartoon? But that actually was in the comics. Aquaman had a friend who was an octopus who played the drums in those early Aquaman comics. And so there were all of these...
Of course he had a friend.
Of course Aquaman had an octopus
who played the drums. They should have developed that storyline in the movie. Like how they became friends.
Yeah, when did the drumming octopus come in? Was that like during the battle scene when Aquaman first went to Atlantis?
It was like their first battle, yeah.
Yeah, so the octopus is drumming during the battle or something like that.
Later, Aquaman's like, okay, when everything was said and done, he's like, dude, Octopus, you have some sick beats. Let's be friends.
That should have been the post-credit scene. But I wasn't too disappointed with the post-credit scene that we got, where we got the dad from Fresh Off the Boat teaming up with Black Manta to set up the sequel. I mean, that's a sequel I would watch. Now, Vanessa keeps saying, no, the dad from Fresh Off the Boat is not going to be one of the villains in the next movie. But I say yes, and that's the movie I want to see. Also, that actor, I don't know his name, the actor who plays the dad from Fresh Off the Boat, who's like the conspiracy theorist guy who's right in this movie. He's like, Atlantis is rising, and everyone's like, you're crazy, and but he's totally right. He is also a character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He was in Ant-Man 2, playing like the FBI agent who was in charge of watching Scott Lang while he was on house arrest. So that's interesting. They have not a major character, but a actor who plays characters in both cinematic universes from these competing comic franchises. Maybe it wasn't that cool after all. Vanessa's giving me the, you are more of a nerd than I thought. I talked about the octopus.
He roped me into this. I had no choice.
Into doing the review, not seeing the movie. Vanessa wanted to see the movie. And Vanessa, tell us why. Tell us why you wanted to see the movie.
What do you want me to say?
I want you to be honest. Be honest.
1 + 1 = 2.
It has to do with a certain man's abs.
It's not his abs.
Not the abs.
It's the whole package.
Okay, basically a certain shirtless Jason Momoa.
I mean, who doesn't want to see
looking very
that?
ripped and stacked.
If you're a woman.
Throughout half
and
the film.
And a man, sometimes.
Yeah, in fact, I recall afterwards, Vanessa's biggest complaint was, I heard he was shirtless during a whole lot more of this movie than he actually was.
Can you not point out all of these things to your viewers?
He wasn't shirtless nearly enough. I love you. I love you.
And it wasn't like I was so upset. It was just a comment. A comment saying, hey, I thought he was going to have more times without a shirt.
Vanessa heard some reviews, I guess, saying that Jason Momoa was going to be shirtless a whole lot more than he actually was in this film. Now, it happened. It was there.
Okay, moving on.
So, moving on to the actual plot. But, yeah. Actually, let's not move on to the actual plot. Because Vanessa has told me that she hates those reviews, those movie reviews online, where all they do is give a summary of the plot and call it a review. Now, this is a spoiler review, assuming you've already seen the movie, meaning you already know the plot. So, Aquaman. Somehow, DC, Warner Brothers, after making so many terrible flops, which is mind-boggling to me because they make some really, really good animated feature-length films. For example, Assault on Arkham. It's the animated Suicide Squad movie. When they announced they were making a live-action Suicide Squad movie, I got really excited. I was like, wow, that's cool. All they have to do is do a live-action Assault on Arkham, and that's going to be the best comic book movie ever. But they didn't. They did something totally different, and it was just weird. And like all those DCEU movies, it ended with a big, glowing, swirling energy creature that they had to fight, screaming something like, "Destroy them all!" And that happened in, man, all of these movies. Fortunately, it didn't happen in Aquaman. Aquaman ended with a big, almost like a Lord of the Rings-like battle between all these different sea creatures and Atlantis and all that, which, you know, it worked.
It was cool.
One thing I felt a little conflicted about at first was the deliberate use of cliches in this film. For example, last line of the movie, "I am Aquaman." You know, where they, you know, that cliche, that trope where the character announces himself, "I am."
If you were Aquaman,
deliberate pause, pregnant
you would
pause.
like announce who you were.
Yeah. And who else? Ocean Master, Aquaman's brother, when he announces his title of Ocean Master, he's like, "You can call me Ocean Master," with that deliberate pause. And then who else did that? Black Manta did the same thing, like, "I am Black Manta." So at first I was thinking like, I don't not really digging the cliches, but afterwards I thought about it and realized, you know what? I actually love the fact that they are not shying away from the cliches, because it's a total nod to the comic books, because that's totally how they do it in the comic books.
You can't tell he's a comic book nerd.
I love comic books, man.
You should see his collection.
One way a lot of comic books and comic books tend to be like 25 to 30 pages long, and a lot of times they end on a cliffhanger with a big panel of some character delivering some sort of cliffhanger line like, "I am Aquaman," or whatever, and then we're like, whoa, we're all jazzed to see what Aquaman does in the next issue now that we know who he is. So yeah, when I realized this is a comic book accurate movie, like for the first time ever, and they weren't afraid to do that, yeah, the cliches totally make sense, and they fit. There was who is it? Bat in the Sun. It's a YouTube channel. They make these super power beatdowns where they have like these really cool, really well done like special effects fights with people in costumes and makeup and everything, and special effects. There was this one like Wolverine versus the Predator. So you have Wolverine from the X-Men, and he's wearing his comic book accurate yellow costume, you know, the yellow tights with the funky headgear and all that. The one that in the X-Men movies that Fox made, they said, "Oh, that'll never work," and they poked fun at it, and they made a few jokes in the movie about it. And a lot of people said, well, yeah, of course they're not going to use that costume in the movie because it would just look dumb. But the Bat in the Sun film showed you can actually make a serious, cool comic book movie and make those comic book costumes work. And I absolutely loved that. And I love the fact that they were able to do that with Aquaman, and they weren't afraid to change everything up. For example, if you look at Aquaman's first appearance in the DCEU with Justice League, he was wearing a way different costume. It was like all, like, I don't know, how would you describe that? Blended in with the background like everything else in that movie. Yeah,
who was the actor that played him?
Same actor, Jason Momoa.
Oh.
Yeah, he was in Justice League as well. playing Aquaman. They made a subtle, well, not so subtle reference to Justice League when Mira, the redheaded Mirror Lady, says to Aquaman, "You defeated what's his name, CGI monster guy from Justice League, Steppenwolf." That's it. Yeah, fairly forgettable character. Yeah. So Vanessa, I've talked quite a bit, for like 5, 10, 15 minutes straight about Aquaman and comic book nerdiness while you've been looking down at the table. What are your thoughts about the movie?
It was a good movie. I enjoyed it. I felt like there wasn't any times that were really slow. I felt like it kept up the pace. I thought there was some good comedic aspects. I really liked Nicole Kidman in it. I was surprised to see her, and I thought she did a really good job.
Question: why were you surprised to see Nicole Kidman?
I don't know. I just didn't see her being in a comic book movie role.
I was also surprised, and
but
afterwards
it worked,
I was wondering,
and it was really nice.
why did that
it.
surprise me?
I don't know, because she's usually, the lead actress in things. Actually, I mean, she did have a big part in this movie, but yeah, I thought that her being like a side character is not usually, like, she never is usually the side character. She's always like the main character. So I guess that surprised me, but maybe that's what her roles will be now. I don't know. And, and maybe she just wanted to do a comic book movie because it's awesome. And, she was a good choice. And, I really like the storyline of, like, the relationship between Queen Atlanta is her name, and the father. I thought that was very sweet.
The lighthouse keeper guy.
I like how the lighthouse keeper guy, he would come every morning and look for her, and at the end when he finally sees her, then I'm like, oh, my eyes starting to get wet.
So question for you. So when the lighthouse keeper first meets Atlanta, he picks her up on the beach, brings her to his house because she's injured, tries to nurse her back to health. She wakes up, assaults him, acts like a crazy person, eats his goldfish, and he's totally into it because she's hot. Now here's the question: if she wasn't an attractive woman, how would that situation have played out differently?
Get out of my house, you crazy! Yeah, for sure. But she was very exotic and interesting. So, or love at first sight, whatever. Anyway, or maybe she used a little ocean charm on him.
Is that one of her powers? Because I noticed the Atlanteans have different powers. Like Aquaman is the only one who can talk to the ocean animals, and Mira is the only one who has the aquakinesis, water manipulation power. It seems.
What? Aquaman doesn't have the kinesis.
Not initially. Now, later in the comics, like after he lost his hand, spoiler alert for the comics, Aquaman gets his hand chopped off and replaces it with a hook. That'd be interesting if they...
Horrible.
Yeah, that'd be interesting if they did that in the next movie. Had, what's his name, Black Manta chop off his hand with one of those Atlantean blades. Yeah, I think it was part of DC's attempt to make Aquaman more edgy, because like non-comic book fans didn't really appreciate Aquaman. Again, they still saw him as like that childhood cartoon character from Super Friends, and so they gave him a beard, they made him all edgy and tough looking, they gave him a harpoon for a hand, and gave him some really dark storylines for a change. Whereas before that, Aquaman was more of a fun character as opposed to like this edgy, serious type of guy.
Yeah. I think this movie needed more dinosaurs. It gave me because it just showed a lot of dinosaurs, like when they went in towards the center of the core or whatever of the earth. And I was like, this is so cool. Like, we need more dinosaurs.
It was cool. It was a visually spectacular movie in a lot of ways.
And my favorite scene is when all those creepy monster-looking things that reminded me of zombies, when they, like, were, like...
The sea zombies.
Like, like thousands, hundreds of thousands of them were all just kind of surrounding Aquaman with his little, what do you call those things? glow stick.
Oh yeah, the flares.
Flare,
They're trying to scare
flare.
off these creatures with flares.
Yes, the flare. That was so cool, and you could see them all just like. Oh, that was so cool.
So yeah, the CGI was really well done. Visually spectacular film. Definitely worth watching in 3D. I'm always disappointed when I don't see 3D movies with images that come out like holographic projections. There was a really cool one I saw at an IMAX theater. It was like a 30-minute long film about prehistoric dinosaurs that had like the holographic projections come out of the screen.
Yeah, but those ones are like specialty films.
Yeah, but generally when we see these wide release films that are meant to be released both in 3D and 2D, we don't get that or that in very limited quantities.
They show you just like a little
rock
depth.
or water droplet come out of the screen, whatever.
It's not like its purpose is not like main purpose is not 3D.
Yeah, but I would love to see one of those again, you know, like fish and sharks jumping out of the screen. That would be amazing. But even so, if you're just looking at the depth of the 3D, it worked really well. So a lot of these 3D films are adapted to 3D in post-production and not made with 3D in mind. But this one worked really well, so that was cool. Yeah. So the pros, great comic book adaptation. Another thing I was thinking about afterward was this really a good movie? Or does it just seem good compared to all the other DC movies that came before that sucked so much? And I had the same conundrum after watching Wonder Woman. Because Wonder Woman was a pretty good movie that followed up a bunch of really terrible DC films. We saw that one together, and what do you think? Was Wonder Woman really a good movie, or was it just better than say Batman v Superman?
Yeah, I liked Wonder Woman's plot. What I liked about Aquaman is that he definitely had a difficult time with some bad guys, and it didn't look like he was just so amazing. Like, I like that he seemed more natural, and it's like made us feel more like he was a real person, whereas Wonder Woman just kicked everyone's ass and just had no problem. Yeah,
Aquaman had an actual hero's journey. In fact, yeah. one thing you mentioned right after we saw it was this was the Arthurian legend, and I was like, oh wait, King Arthur. Oh, literally, we have a guy named Arthur who is a king, who finds out he is a king, goes to retrieve a magical ancient weapon to prove he is the king, goes back, and yeah, that is the Arthurian legend.
And the lady in the water.
And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a great story, so retelling that story in cinematic comic book form is cool. Yeah, the lady in the water, the lady in the lake.
Cool.
Yeah, Aquaman. Right. Go check it out. Let us know what you think in the comments down below.
Bye-bye.